on the direction we go. So I really wanted to talk to everybody today. I will try and get this into 2 minutes, but I really feel like 2 minutes is a very short amount of time for public interest and input. So I'll do my best, and when I don't get through, I can either come back to another meeting or whatever you would prefer. My husband and I became guardians of 2 really great kids 2 years ago. And when we took that on, we took on being their parent, but also their advocate. I'm not coming to you today from a political platform. I have no interest in doing that. It's not my job to sway anyone's political belief. I wouldn't want you doing that for me. However, I want to talk first about the operational update regarding the masking for summer school and potentially there beyond based on the vaccination. Regardless of what any of us think about this pandemic, right, wrong, or otherwise, what we do know is it has altered the life of our children and us as parents and adults drastically for the last 18 months, and it will continue to do so into the immediate and for reaching future. We've seen a decline in mental health amongst children and adults, and we've seen strained relationships between parents and their children because of virtual schooling. Very normal to happen with virtual schooling, but it has happened. Daily, with in-person learning, my son came home with a rash around his mouth to the point that it would bled on numerous occasions. It was determined by his physician that this was due to wearing a damp mask all day long. Children don't understand that they need to change their mask when it's damp. A first grader running down the hall doesn't care. He cares about getting outside to recess. My daughter came home with headaches. She is an anxiety sufferer based on her past. And to watch her struggle through that every day as a parent is grueling. I have a whole litany of information about masks. The paper masks that you buy at Costco that are cute for kids, 3 micron get through there. The COVID virus is 1 micron. So out of every pore of that mask is coming through 3 microns of virus. Don't even get me started on paper or on fabric masks. That goes to a whole different level. They're not vetted. Every mask box you get says it's not for medical use. Cannot be guaranteed to protect you from anything such as that. Someone smoking or a wildfire smoke is 5 microns. These masks don't even protect against that. I'm concerned that we have all of these operational updates going into place, and we have meetings on auditorium use, on building a new school, which I think is fabulous, and I'm very excited about my kids going to school there. But we don't on this, and there's no consensus for what this looks like as we go forward. We talk about vaccinations for kids under 11. We have no idea when that's coming, whether you're anti-vaxxer or you're a vaxxer. It really doesn't matter. We're not going to know who's vaccinated, but my kids can go to Costco, they can go to Pick and Save, they can go anywhere without a mask with people who are vaccinated or unvaccinated, and the risk of kids getting this is so much smaller than that of adults. And so my question is, why can this not be open to public forum for parents to come in, vote on the matter, discuss it in a bigger setting? The response I got about this was, you don't have to send your kids to summer school. What about that enrichment for my child that they need this summer? That's not fair. It's not fair to them. The other response is, you have options for virtual schooling. I can't virtually school my child. I work all day from home. I have no resources to do that. And so my question is, can this be discussed in a bigger forum as we go forward? I don't want to continue having to come to these meetings and bombard you and take your time, but what I do want is for this to be fair for our children. We are over 18 months into this. 18 months into this. People are going back to work without masks. People are going shopping without masks. Kids don't wear them properly. They don't work. So that's the biggest reason I'm here today. I would like to come back and talk about what critical race theory looks like in our district. I don't know if it's even been discussed yet. But I would like to see that as a bigger forum as well. And I think that's something as a district we could be doing a better job. So I know I'm way over my 2 minutes and I want to respect that. But I have information if you want it regarding studies that are being done about masking and the like. I'd be happy to provide it to you.
Thank you for your time. Cindy, she's done. She can hear us.
Cindy, can you hear us?
Yep, sorry, I was on mute.
It's all good.
Thank you very much. Are there any other individuals for public input?
No, Lynette was the only one that was signed in.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. All right, then moving on to staff recognition. I understand there is some great recognition wanting to be done for our staff pandemic heroes. Jordan, did you want to introduce Matt or?
Well, actually, changing plans. Mr. Green had a little family situation arise today. So I think, as he likes to joke, sometimes you end up getting the backup. So tonight the backup is me, which is definitely a major downgrade from Mr. Green, but I'll do my best. So first off, Mr. Green, Matt Green, our Student Services Director, wanted to recognize some individuals, that he called pandemic heroes. And I just want to say, from our standpoint as a district, obviously many people stepped up. There was hundreds of people that really did some amazing things. But Matt and the Student Services Group wanted to provide some special recognition. So the first one is Joyce Ruland. Joyce, I want you to step forward so you can fully be embarrassed. I'll have you hold this. A little card, don't lose that.
I'll get some good
You
pictures.
can get close.
Yes, yes. All right. So here's a few words about Joyce, though. Joyce literally stepped up to run with a student in the fall in cross country. Became an assistant coach in the spring to support that student and others. She has a love for running. I often see her using the trail. We've even bumped into each other running the Shamrock Shuffle, I believe, in downtown Madison together. She volunteered for curbside meal delivery nearly every quarter. Rebecca Plano, who's here as well, made the following comment: "I just love working with Joyce because I feel so good whenever I'm around her." So that is true for so many people, and Joyce, the district is better for having you. So thank you very much, Joyce. Let's give Joyce a round of applause. Up next, we have the aforementioned Rebecca Plano. Rebecca, step forward. Congratulations. The words that Matt had put down for Rebecca: Wisconsin Heights hit the jackpot when we hired Rebecca. Her professionalism, her positivity, and her dedication. She's incredibly organized. She's easy to communicate with and is a great communicator overall. She does what it takes to get the job done well. She goes the extra mile and puts in the extra hours to get things done right. And the Uniting to Learn dinner is something that she catered the entire event single-handedly. I will just say for Rebecca, yes, I've said many times to her as well during her operational planning meetings, we are very blessed to have you in the district. So let's give Rebecca
Thanks
a
so
round of
much.
applause. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, that's awkward video.
I didn't know how long you wanted to stand there. Now I gotta go back on. Okay.
See, so I said Matt had called in the backup, and I'm butchering it. All right, up next we have Carrie Call. So Carrie, please step forward. Congratulations, Carrie. Matt writes about Carrie. She usually does the bus routes once a year and tweaks it as we add kids. This year, by my count, she had to do it over a half dozen times. She made specialized routes with support hubs, AM, PM routes, hybrid meso, hybrid high school, and then full capacity at Black Earth Meso Middle School, High School. Sometimes when I called her with a student that needed to be added that lives very far, on a very far out road, I'm glad she didn't swear at me out loud. Carrie's problem-solving skills are phenomenal, and once again, I will just say, Carrie and I had many conversations this year. A lot of them were, let us know what absolutely can be done, and we will figure out the rest, Carrie. And she always let us know and figured it out. So thank you very much, Carrie. We appreciate it. And last, but certainly not least, Katie Howe. Katie, please come forward. Congratulations, Katie. Matt's notes about Katie. One of my greatest worries last spring was that we would have a student or family member contract COVID and become seriously ill or pass away. Leading the efforts to keep everyone safe was Katie. We had no known transmission at school because of the measures she helped us implement. We were extremely fortunate to have a school nurse like Katie who had a master's in public health. Katie always seemed a step ahead because she saw things through the lens of virus transmission. She supported us and educated us through data and convincing people through persistence and common sense to choose the wise and safe option. Although I remember one time she said, "I feel like I have to be a mom here and say no to you, and that you shouldn't do that." And I will say to Katie as well, this has been a long and winding road since last March, and early on there was a lot to learn for all of us, and thankfully we were smart enough to tap into Katie's expertise, and I think we've grown a great mutual respect and appreciation for the complexity of our jobs, and her efforts are certainly appreciated. So thank you very much, Katie.
Thank you,
So I know Matt's tied up with very important matters right now, but I will apologize to Matt for being a more pinch hitter. But just want to thank those of you that we recognized and appreciate your time. Obviously don't have to stay here for the rest of the board meeting, but just really wanted to recognize the way you went above and beyond and just stepped up and did what you could to help out. So thank you very much. We appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
I will definitely say that as well. I think that everyone has just done such a fabulous job. All of you have certainly stepped up, and we've even recognized that as a board. We have definitely gone through some tough challenges this past year, and we do want to just say thank you for your hard work. Thank you. All right. We will then move on to the approval of the Board of Education meeting minutes from May 24th. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Great. I think I heard a first and a second. Were there any changes or questions needed? Not hearing any. I will call the roll. Mike?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Mary Beth? Yes. James?
If nothing's done, we'll just be back. You're gonna hear a lot more of us. You may even hear from a lawyer. So you better talk about this shit, or this is dumb. Because I'm sick of this. You guys just ignore us. You just move on. It's dumb. You work for us. We elect you. You work for us. We pay you. You work for us. If you don't listen to us and you just ignore us, well then we'll just be back, and we'll be back to more people, and we're gonna shove it in your face till you're sick of it. I don't care. Do something about it. Ignorant.
Jordan, can you help us out here 1 second?
Yep. Sorry, we just had a little break in action there, but we're back on right now, so.
Okay.
I did not
I-
say yes.
Was that James?
Was I the only one?
He was on me, yes.
Barb?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
I'll say yes as well. All right. Moving then on to the approval of payroll accruals and disbursements. Do I have a motion to accept the items as listed?
I'll make a motion.
Second. Got them all, yep, Angie and then Matt.
Perfect. Are there any questions as they were presented? Not hearing any. I'll go ahead and call the votes. Mike?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Mary Beth? Yes. James?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
And this last year. This has really been a changed situation. I've missed these reports from all of you, so I appreciate us getting back to this. So I'm looking forward to hearing it. So Jordan, go ahead if you want to get us started.
Yep, so we'll move right into 6.1 then under facilities and transportation, our first focal point under our committee discussions. First up, we have Mike Betcher, a visitor from Performance Services, but a familiar visitor. So Mike,
Hey,
if you want to
everybody.
take it away with updates on facilities.
Yep, Mike Betcher, Performance Services Project Manager. And so excitedly, like we talked about last meeting, we moved into the construction phase of the projects, both portions of the projects, and we started out really strong. So yeah, since the last meeting, I think is there a slide there with a few pictures and stuff like that? You can click on, just open it up.
So go back to board docs. Slow down.
I gotta stand up.
I put you on the spot. I can talk without them too, I guess. I didn't mean to.
Too short.
Okay.
Let's combobulated.
We'll start with the high school and middle school renovations. With school out for the summer, we really kicked off last Monday, really heavy. And the first few weeks are really heavy with the demolition phase, which is just really kind of getting all the old mechanical equipment out there, the architectural stuff, demoing the high school corridor ceilings, all the different things you have in there, the classroom expansion, demoing the walls in there, the kitchen, front serving line configuration, kind of doing all that. So that's what we've really been heavy in last week and this week with. We are starting some new installations this week. We're going to start framing some of the corridor ceilings, hard lid ceilings, some of the smaller pieces of mechanical equipment we're installing new as well. Mechanical piping and things like that, some of the infrastructure stuff we're getting in as well. That's all heading towards the thick of the work in July more, end of June more, and July putting new equipment in, like really getting into the bulk of like new installations and inspections and everything like that, leading to hopefully finishing things out in August and things like that throughout August. So got a few pictures there just so you can see the demo. They're not the prettiest pictures. I'll put more visuals in when it's not just tearing everything up because it's kind of like
Well, that's the fun part. Tearing it apart, it's the fun part.
yeah, but you can just see in some of those a lot of the removed existing kind of older ceilings there. That's just a smaller new piece of mechanical equipment that started to get replaced called a variable air volume device. So just a few different snippets there so you can see. And my intent is to keep bringing a lot of visuals, and especially when we start putting some new stuff in.
It's all good.
Yep. At the elementary school, like we talked about last time, we hit the ground. You can just scroll down a little bit more on that. Yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah, good point. Since last meeting, we mobilized. We started the construction, fencing, and signage, and we started all the earthwork operations, which started with erosion control measures and kind of clearing and grubbing the area, and then just getting into focus on the building pad, doing all the topsoil removal, and then start putting in the good dirt to build the building pad so we can get to foundations. We're probably a couple weeks away from starting foundations, and that's when we'll actually start digging the footings systematically around the perimeter so we can pour the footings, and then start doing underground work with electrical and plumbing mainly, so that we can start doing the concrete slab on grade and then just start building the building up from there. Other things through this summer we're planning on doing is getting the site utilities started and try to get a lot of the site utility main work done that's needed for the building, which is basically infrastructure kind of around the elementary addition, like northwest, south sides of it. And that will be really our focus through the summer, because then we'll just start building the building up from there as we go. And you can see an aerial there, and I think actually Matt Green's son took that photo with his drone, so I threw that in there. I thought that was kind of fun.
Yeah,
One
that's
weekend.
nice.
Yep, he's got a couple other videos too, so he's not here, but I was trying to. I like that.
Can I skip the
Fluff it
meeting?
up.
Yeah.
Talk about it?
Yeah. So if anybody has any questions or whatever, just let
Well,
me know.
I just want to make a comment about the last few days of school and having the dump trucks coming in and out of the school with, everybody, picking up their kids, all the students leaving with the buses. I thought that, they, were very cautious with having, the kids, the new drivers, the existing drivers, with all the buses coming in. they did a great job with that, and that was awesome to see that they were very, you know, like I said, very cautious considering how many kids were standing out waiting for the buses and stuff like that. So that was really good to see, you know, that they're very well aware of their surroundings, so.
Thank you.
It's
We'll
good.
relay that back to the team.
Yes,
That's where
please
guys-
do.
It was a specific discussion. You know,
Yeah.
we want to make sure priority first is that everybody's
Right.
safe.
Well, I have to
Especially when
say,
school is in session.
I'm gonna spend a lot of time down there because I actually live right off the Wolf Run Trail. So we've
Yeah.
already taken multiple golf cart rides down by the new site because my youngest, he's in first grade, he'll be in second grade, so he's super excited about, you know,
Yeah.
seeing what's going on down there. So I'm sure
Great.
we'll have a presence down there quite often this summer.
Great. Thanks.
Any other questions for Mike? The other piece that we had attached, that you just want to click on the scope of work. So if you recall, after the auditorium referendum, we followed that up with a meeting that included the PSI team, the administrative team, and then some of our staff and community members that were interested in that cause, just to want to get some ideas out and some things that we could do. There was a good meeting, a good discussion. The PSI team followed up on some of those pieces of feedback. Bill and I actually met this morning to kind of go through this list of items. So things like replacing the wood doors under the stage. That's something that I believe our team's going to try to tackle. The infilling the back of the stage, so I mean a common concern is the fact that they're trying to conduct rehearsals when there's basketball practice or something else going on the other side. I think we can all imagine whether you're an actor or an actress or anything in between, that would be difficult. So that's one thing that we're looking at, trying to maybe get some quotes from some people to possibly do that for us. The floor was a concern. We've heard that throughout this process, so we're analyzing options to either put it in overlay, which is something that Chris on the PSI team had showed in the pictures, or the possibility of just doing like we would do with the gym floor, kind of on that 6 to 7 year basis where you actually sand it all the way down and then replace any boards that need to be replaced. There was an issue with the smoke vents, some daylight making its way through those perhaps, so ASAP is coming later this week to look at that. So just wanted to keep the board posted that those conversations are ongoing. Bill and I met this morning, and we're either looking at trying to attack some of those things ourselves or getting quotes for others to come in and try to help out on that. Now, obviously, the thing that Mike can appreciate more than any of us, but I'm quickly appreciating, is the logistics of all of this. And when you're trying to do almost $5 million worth of work in 55 days, there's a ton of logistics. So even something like this where it's like, oh, that shouldn't be a big deal. Well, if this was happening alone, it's not a big deal. When you're trying to coordinate these projects along with flooring, tile work, and everything else, there's just a lot of moving parts. So we will do as much as we possibly can. I think most of it is feasible. Some things may not get done this summer because of all the logistics with the other project, but Bill is very, very aware of our desires and is going to try to get that stuff done as much as possible. So I don't know if you have any questions on that. Anything else, Mike?
Nope, not for now.
Keep up the good work.
Mike, just so you know, Mike had asked about the possibility of if they were in the area and they just wanted to stop in or something. I said, well, obviously we just wanted to walk around so long as you're safe. You're always welcome in our buildings.
Yeah.
If they wanted to walk and talk to somebody to give me a heads up, and whether it was me or you or Bill or somebody, we're open to that as well. So I just want to give you a heads up on that.
Great, yeah, we got extra hard hats if you need them, safety glasses.
In the cafeteria, is that where your stage?
Yeah, we're stationed in the cafeteria right now, so you could find us there. And we could give a tour or whatever, depending on the schedule and things like that. More than happy to do that.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Shifting gears. Yep. We have Katie here, so I don't have to say, hey, Katie, are you
Yeah,
there?
right? What a refreshing change to actually see your faces. I know.
Katie, you're right there. So So first, under the curriculum goals and standards section, bit of a condensed version of our updates. So if you just want to go ahead, Bev. The data continues to be promising. Case counts have declined in the county over the last couple of weeks. Again, I'll let Katie share more information on that. Go ahead, Bev. This should look very similar. This is identical to the slide that we had at the last board meeting. To date, the guidance has not changed, and I understand it's not legally binding, but the guidance is strongly recommending that school and youth settings continue to require masks as outlined in that CDC guidance. And just hoping that through safe practices now we set ourselves up for a successful start to the regular school year in September. If you want to go to the next one, Bev. I know people are always interested. I personally am always interested, so I just wanted to share this for context. So at our June 4th Dane County Superintendent's meetings, these were the districts that were in attendance at that meeting virtually, who shared their plans and what they're doing for summer school. So 6 of the group said yes, that they will be requiring masks during summer school. 2 are to be determined, which is Lodi and Waunakee. Their board's voting tonight on their operational plans. And then 1 district, in the case of DeForest, said yes to K6, and then 7-12, only students in grades 7 through 12 are present. It could be optional. So I understand we don't have to do what everyone else is doing. At the same time, what we've talked about is generally being an outlier in a public health situation is probably not what you want to be either. So I just wanted to share this for context of the schools that reported. I mean, yes, 6 of them are in the exact same boat that we are.
And this is for summer school?
This is for summer school,
Okay.
correct.
And for DeForest, you can vaccinate your kids that are seventh graders already.
Correct, and I would say the difference for us is once we had that data that said over 91% of our students are 11 and under, the notion of saying we were going to differentiate based on 7th grade. The other thing to me, to be honest, that gets hard on that is enforcement. In our case, we probably know most of our students well enough that we could say, you're in 6th grade, you're in 7th grade. But when you put a lot of kids in a building, to then delineate between who's in 6th grade and who's in 7th grade, and to then tell someone they can or cannot wear a mask based on that, just becomes difficult in practice. And then the outdoor requirements are basically identical to ours as well. So I just wanted to share that context because I think it's important. It's something we've considered this whole time through is what are our neighbors doing? So procedures, once again, this is the same slide that we had a couple of weeks ago, but Bev, if you want to go to the next one. One thing that we have updated or are bringing to you tonight with updates, and this is once again based on public health. So quarantine has obviously been a tough thing this whole last year. They did kind of relax what we're allowed to do with quarantine. So close contacts, if students are wearing masks indoors, we will only be requiring a quarantine for the positive case only. So other people that are close contacts, unless they're symptomatic, will not have to quarantine because of the mask wearing. That's one of those things where the data is now showing us that the masking has helped and there hasn't been transmission when kids are wearing masks. And then the second piece, if they're a close contact and they were not wearing a mask, the quarantine would be 7 days with a negative test or 10 days if symptom-free. Previously that was 14. So I guess this theme of turning the dial based on the information that we're receiving from public health, I would say this is indicative of that as well and is moving in that direction. Liz?
So, yes, the high school end of the building is a little chaotic and a little ripped apart. But fun, I tell you. But in our middle school side of the building, last week we had science camp all week with UW-Madison. That was really exciting. We had kids from not just our district, but other districts that all over, outside, inside, working. Driver's ed in person started last week too. It's the first 3 weeks here in June, and some eager young drivers, my child included. Mother perhaps not as eager, but, you know, well, maybe I am. And then we're gonna offer a History of American Government summer credit opportunity. We had some students who did not do well in some classes this year, and they need an opportunity to earn a half credit this summer. It will help them with their credit totals towards graduation. And Dawn Stotts has stepped forward. She's going to do a History of American Government class for those students. And opportunity to earn a half credit in social studies. They need 3 credits for graduation, and it will count towards those 3 credits. So, and I'll let Andy cover it, wrapping up athletics, but he's been everywhere, as have our kids. So, but June's still busy in our building.
Thanks, Liz.
Yep.
Go ahead. Katie.
Hey, it's me.
Like this one.
I tried to pare it down a little bit for you guys instead of the whole big thing. What I wanted to keep on here is some of the more important dates. So the November date is where our peak was of cases, and that's the first column is in Wisconsin. The April date is kind of where our spring peak was, and that May date was the last time I talked to you guys, I believe. And then where it is at now. So in Wisconsin, we're having an average of 111 cases a day. When you look at that compared to November, that's pretty amazing. And our percent positive is 1.2%, so that's below 5%. This is where we wanted to go. So that's looking really good. In Dane County, we are at 7.4 cases per day right now. Most of the last 10 days has been below 10. I think there was one day that was 16, but they're significantly lower than where they have been right now. It puts us, when you look at the CDC like transmission scale, there's low, moderate, high, and severe. We're still technically in moderate, but we are like on the border of low. So again, really encouraging to see the numbers for percent positive is low again, which is also showing that these decreases in cases isn't because people aren't getting tested. Our testing is still at good for what the amount of cases that are out there. So it's a true decrease in cases. So just kind of looking where everything is at in Wisconsin, over 7-day average for 100,000 people, we're seeing 1.8 cases per day. Dane County's a little bit lower at 1.2. And we haven't had anything recently in the Black Earth, Mesa, Wisconsin Heights district area. I think there was one case a little over a week ago, but other than that, there really hasn't been much activity in our area. So it's great. It is. So vaccinations, they're still going up, just slower than where it has been. Wisconsin, the interesting thing too is you can see the number of people that have started are almost equal to the number that have completed. So a lot of the people that are getting the vaccine are almost done getting the vaccine. We're at 49% of all of Wisconsin has gotten the vaccine as we started with the first dose. In Dane County, we're at 67.6%. And to note, these are numbers of the entire population. It's not just eligible population. So this includes like my children that were here. So they're not eligible to get it. So Dane County, I think what they said, we were up in like 77, 78% of people that were eligible have gotten the vaccine. So yeah, no, it's really exciting. Our staff hasn't changed that I know of, but we're still 92.6% of our staff got vaccinated. I think that's fantastic. Students, we're still getting more and more students that are getting vaccinated. We're up to 50%. I took out seniors that graduated because they're not going to be here anymore. So I took them out, but I've been adding people in that have had birthdays over the summer so far. So we have 140 that have started the series and 97 that have completed it, and we're right at that 50% right now for our students. So I was asked to kind of just do a recap of kind of what happened COVID-wise at school this year. We had 41 COVID cases in staff and students that were all in person at the time of their infection. I didn't include any. There were more cases, and I maybe don't know of some that happened while they were schooling at home or over the summer or on a break and weren't at school while they were infectious at all. But there were 41 that happened that people were potentially at school while infectious. 57% of those cases happened during our peak in October through December. So when you saw those 6,000 cases a day in November, that peak, a lot of our cases happened during that time as well. We had a small outbreak in October that was my fourth point there, that was related mostly to sports. Honestly, even one sports-related outbreak I consider great. We had kids playing sports and only had one outbreak. I think that's great. And we had no known transmission in school. We never had anybody who was here that was positive that we knew that somebody they were by then developed COVID. So not to say that it didn't happen, but we just don't know of any instance that it did. And my note was, I think the low case and outbreak total is a testament to the safety and mitigation strategies that we put in place. We did what we needed to do to keep people safe while here at school, and it worked. That's what this shows. You look at other places and they had a lot more than 41 cases, so I think we did very well.
Thanks, Katie. Andy, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I have to apologize though because I'm having a really hard time hearing anybody over there.
We can hear you. You sound lovely.
Oh, thanks, Dan. I appreciate that. So do you. I can hear you pretty well. So if you could relay any questions my way, that'd be awesome.
Sounds good.
I just wanted to, jump in and say, soccer, golf, and lacrosse season wrapped up. We had 0 COVID incidents this year in those sports, which is so awesome. I just think back to where we were a year ago, and as the administrative team and the board were deciding, do we provide this opportunity for kids? And that was a tough thing to do and a lot of apprehension, but we did it. And as Katie mentioned, we had one sports-related outbreak this year, but that was it. And I'm knocking on wood because we're not done with everything yet, but just really cool to see, especially the spring sports wrap up their seasons. And for those of you who went to games, I think you saw, how cool it was to get back to some normalcy and to see the experience that those kids got. I think that was really important. So, thank you again for providing that opportunity for them. I think we made the right choice. Baseball, softball, and track are still alive and well and moving on in the postseason. So I hope my knock on wood works for them and that they complete the season healthy and safe. And I'm getting updates from track as we speak, and we got lots of kids moving on to sectionals, so that's awesome. And then, finally, I just wanted to give a big shout out to Bartlett Holmes, our girls and boys soccer coach. Fell just short of the regional final this weekend. Would have been his 8th regional title as a head coach. He is moving out of state, so we are unfortunately losing him. So really sad to see him go, sad to see him coach his last game, but it was a great one to end it on, even though it was a tough loss. But, thank you, Bartlett, for all those years of service and everything you've done for our kids. And that's about all I got.
Any questions for Andy, feedback? They're all good, Andy.
Thank you.
Just really, the transition here, we have been told for, it feels like a long time now, that there's going to be updated information in mid to late June. We're flirting with mid-June. Haven't seen any updates yet, but hoping that those updates from DHS and DPI are on that timeline as they talked about. And I think from our standpoint, we would hope to provide preliminary plans. So really our next operational planning presentation per se would be planned for that July 12th board meeting unless the board requests otherwise. I feel like that will be our first kind of, here's what the guidance looks like, here's where things are trending, and here's where we think things are going to land in the fall, because that'll give us some time to digest, work through it, and then finalize some plans in late July. So in terms of the notion of, you know, some of the concerns with like immunizations, things like that, to me, the notion of like immunization in this case being much different than how we would handle an immunization like we have for, I don't know how many are on the regular schedule. Seems like a lot, because I always have to take my kids to them.
Yeah.
That's the one doctor's appointment that I get, is immunizations. So, I mean, the notion that we would handle this or exclude or include any differently than we do for any other immunization, that would not be something that, to me, we would ever consider. So the notion that we would tell people that they can't be in school without that, or, you know, differentiate based on that factor, I do not believe that that would be the case or anything that anyone would recommend, let alone us. So I just want to make that clear right now. That's not something that we're considering. We don't know what the status of the vaccination will be in terms of that, 11 and under population. The hope is that in the next, roughly month, that becomes more clear and we have an idea. Because I think the evidence is that it's working because the numbers are dropping so rapidly. So I think for now that's the hope, is that we come back at that meeting with updates and kind of a preliminary plan, work that through with the school board, and then try to finalize things in late July. But I think by and large, and this is not me being like irrational, I mean, the start of the school year will largely resemble a traditional start to the year. May there be some things that we still put in place in terms of mitigation strategies and try to protect kids and people in our community? Yes. But is it going to be like, whoa, this is like way different than what we're used to? I don't think that's the case either.
Well, the Madison School District announced their plans for the fall, not like mask-wise, but they said that they will go 5 days in person. They will have an online option, but, so I mean, that already, you can see their school districts are already starting to reassure some parents, I think, about what their plans are going to be for the fall. So hopefully we can all just kind of move in that right direction. And
yeah, I feel like the way we ended this
Yeah,
school year,
definitely.
thankfully, was a nice transition into that, and was very successful.
Well, I was gonna say, they just did a clinic, vaccination clinic at Rookies and
Yep.
then at District 1 EMS. I mean,
Yeah.
they're locally popping up. I think at this point, people are not getting vaccinated because they've chosen that they
Right.
don't wanna get vaccinated.
Yeah, they're available.
Yeah, I mean, most Walgreens, you can walk in without an appointment and you can get it that day. So whereas before, when they first started becoming available to others other than 65 and older, it was, people were spending time online trying to find appointments. People are driving 3 hours one way to get a vaccination, and now it's, like I said, you can walk into any Walgreens on any street corner and, get the vaccination. So yeah, I agree that if you haven't already gotten it, it's because you choose not to get it at this point.
Any other questions regarding the updates or the information? All right, thank you. I know that thing sometimes plays hard. Anyone? Actually, do you want to grab the next one right next to it? Yep. So, school improvement planning update. This is also under the curriculum section. So, really wanted to ensure, because it would be easy, and it has been easy from time to time in the midst of everything else, we don't lose sight of the fact that we are trying to grow as a school district in terms of our student learning and our staff development and our instructional practices. So wanted to give a quick update on that as well. So this is kind of a semi-condensed summary version of what was given to the staff at the end of the year in service on May 28th, I believe. So thank you, Katie. Take care.
Thanks so much, Katie.
Thank you.
Great seeing you.
July, I'll be
Yeah, all right.
Sounds good. So just going to have the principals go through and give some updates on their school improvement plans and kind of that information. So Scott, I know you're there. Go ahead and take it away.
Sounds good. Can you hear me okay?
You sound lovely as well.
Oh, I feel lovely. Thank you. So just quickly want to run through our SIP presentation for you. Just a screen here that shows all of the participants of this year. So what we looked at is, this goal has been the same since the year before I started, that there was we noticed a trend that the most vulnerable students were underperforming in literacy, and those students were our special education students and students who are identified as low socioeconomic. And I'll get to that at the very end here to show you how that worked out. But then our goal this year as a staff was that we wanted 80% of the students to move up 3 levels or sections or reach the highest level of the screener that we're going to give this year. So we'll look at that data near the end as well. Our theory of action was basically the idea that if we're better at teaching phonics and phonemic awareness, and if we have discussions about that, if we can learn from one another, that our students are going to directly benefit from that. So that's kind of the crux of our work since I started a couple of years ago. So you'll see that as we move on here as well. So here's kind of our practice profile, looking at our practices and identifying what we wanted to use that was going to have the highest impact. So you can see each year kind of some big things that occurred to kind of help us get to that. This year, basically, after our August meeting in 2020, we looked at an article and kind of identified targeted practices, which were, I believe it's on the next slide. Oh, no, I lied, it's on the next one, but I'll leave this, oh, right there is good.
Okay.
So we identified our practices, and then we looked at each of those 3 areas that we're focusing on, and basically what we noticed is that there are 3 kind of things that are present or should be present when we're giving instruction, and that is feedback to students, a gradual release of responsibility. So we model it, we do it together, and then the student does it independently, and then making sure our sequencing of skills was appropriate. We also took time to develop a very clear rubric, so the staff, when utilizing the practice profile, kind of understood what was expected in their practice, and what could be kind of retooled and what wasn't there, and we could look at that together. And then you go to the next one, and then basically after all that work, we looked at 3 areas that were the most high impact in phonemic awareness, which was rhyming, phoneme identification, and phoneme manipulation. So one of the things that we're working towards is sharing our practices with one another. Like I said, if we can share and get better as a group, then our students are going to benefit. So we work towards that. So this year, each team or staff member needed to share a practice that they do in their class or have done before during our staff meeting, and then we housed them in a shared drive just so everybody could look at them and use them if they needed something. Amy Green, who's our reading and math interventionist, also recorded a lesson utilizing our practice profile, and the SIP team kind of looked at that and had a discussion while looking at our practice profile to see if those elements were there, and gave some feedback to her on that as well. And then the final thing we're working really towards for next year is having a process that the SIP team can observe and provide feedback to colleagues, and again, specifically during phonics and phonemic awareness instruction. So we gave a short kind of survey on how the practice of phonics and phonemic awareness was being implemented. We gathered that information, which again we will use in our August session together. But many teachers indicated that they were already doing all of these things every day, so that was a good thing. We just want to retool those a little bit just to make sure that they are, in line with the practice profile. And I just wanted to note that we're at the beginning levels of implementation when it comes to utilizing it when planning and during instruction as well. So then I asked the question at our last staff meeting together, how strongly would you rate your current level of implementing a practice from the practice profile in the classroom? And you can see that we had a lot of strong people who feel real good about that, and we didn't have anyone who was basically unsure on what was going on, so that was a good sign. I'll take it as that. So next, please, Deb. Now I just want to take a minute to look at some data. This is our kindergartners. So what I want to point out basically is on the right-hand side of it, when you see winter to spring, if you look at that first column of students that fell into that 0 to 25th percentile range, we were able to move 5 students out of that range, which was great. And then jumping to the bottom right, you can see we are able to have, we added 12 more students that were achieving at that high level from winter to spring. So very good stuff in kindergarten. First grade, please, Bev, thank you. And then it's just a similar kind of situation in all the grade levels, frankly, moving kids out of that lower quartile and into the more higher quartile in first grade. And then second grade is a very similar story. So we had 0 students ending in that lower quartile, which was wonderful, and then a lot more, and a majority, frankly, of our students into the higher quartile, which was great news for us at the end of the year. And then I put it all together here just as a school, so you can kind of see where we had, again, a majority of our kindergarten, first, second graders in that higher quartile, which is, again, great. And then there's still some work to do. I'm not going to be naive and say we've got it all figured out, because there are still some students who are in those lower quartiles, which we want to help get them to a better spot too. So again, lots of work to do still, but good results all around. And then finally, I wanted to look at those vulnerable students that I talked about. So if you look on the left side, I think we have 15 students who are in special education. So 7 of those students were able to meet that growth goal, and 8 were not. And then if you look at low socioeconomic, we have 41 students who identify with low socioeconomic, and then 27 of them were able to meet their goal, and then 14 were unable to meet their goal. So like I said, again, we did really well. We celebrate that, but we also look ahead and say, okay, there's a population of students that missed it, so what do we need to do to help support them a little bit better so they can celebrate those achievements as well. So yes, I don't know if there's questions or anything for me, but that's the end of my portion there. Oh, no, there's not. Sorry. Sorry about that. So next steps, these are very important. We're going to continue to keep at our practice profile based on feedback we got from our staff. We're going to keep working at our SIP screener, which is our assessment that we use. Again, we want to work towards peer observation, and then my goal is to really just keep moving towards public practice, because we don't want to teach in silos. We would prefer to share with each other when things are going well and working, so everybody can achieve at high levels as well. Now I'm done.
Any questions for Scott?
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
You're welcome.
Well, hi, everyone. At Mazo, our SIP goal, we've had essentially the same goal the last 2 years. Last year's data at the end of the year just wasn't existent, so we wanted to see this through. So our goal really was focusing on text evidence when answering comprehensive questions with 80%. Essentially, we wanted 80% of our students to be able to cite text evidence when answering comprehension questions with at least 80% accuracy on our grade level assessment at the end of the year. I listed our SIP team members. Essentially, we have a rep from each grade level team. They were really active throughout the year, did a great job within their teams, did a great job with us just working together and putting the plan together. So our targeted need for improvement, we just lack the skills to be able to pull evidence out of something that we read and answer questions to it. Next slide, Doug. So our focus was really, let's pick an instructional strategy that we can use across the board at all grade levels and all subject areas. So we've been using the RAP array strategy. You can see what they mean there. So our students understand what that is and how to use that when they're completing their activities, whether it's an assignment, any assessments that they may have. Go ahead, Bev, we can just keep. So you can see here, all the classrooms, the students have little cards, just as little reminders. That's how we started early on. So had those handy. Some of you may be seen those coming home in backpacks, but they use those to just help focus in their writing and anytime answering questions to follow that process. Make sure they're following, rereading, make sure they're answering the questions, citing their evidence, and explaining what that evidence means moving forward. So practice profile, Scott talked a little bit about this, but really what it is, so what does that instructional strategy look like, and are we all doing it the same? So our SIP team put a practice profile together. Originally, Josie Geischert, our interventionist at Mazo, modeled that for us as a staff. Many of the teachers, they actually practice it within their grade level team meetings. But as a group, we started with working together and talking about it, looking at student examples and the results that we were getting, and then making adjustments from there. So that started last year. This year, because we had that background last year, it just seemed to flow, I'm going to say, better and quicker. And we were able to implement it pretty quickly. We did a survey, and I asked a question on the survey, and I like Scott had that on his slides, but I asked the teachers if they were comfortable, if they'd be comfortable teaching the RAP race strategy to other teachers to be able to implement in their classroom, and 100% of our homeroom teachers answered yes. They'd be glad to do that, and willing to do that, and could do that successfully. So just a little reflection there. I already talked about most of that, but we set the expectations. We used the practice profile. I helped with our new 5th grade teacher, so we pulled that out, went through that with her. Our 5th grade team taught our new teacher, and so we have a plan in place to incorporate any new staff that we get coming in. How do we incorporate that into our lessons? That has seemed to work pretty well ongoing as we move forward. So go ahead, Deb. So you can see there, I talked a little bit about that, and just how do we train each other. Just very successful. Used a lot of examples, modeling with peers, and then also created a rubric, and we practice actually scoring some of the assessments that we had with kids to make sure that we're consistent with how we actually scored our assessments, so our data was valid. That took us a while. That was a year in the making, and last year actually helped with that, and we adjusted at the end of last year. That was some of the work that we actually did at the end of last year to moving forward to this year. Here's how we collected data at the end of each trimester. One of the things that we wanted to keep track of was how often are we using this strategy in our lessons. So teachers went through. That's one of the areas where virtual learning maybe helped us in this process, because our teachers were creating slides for every lesson. So documenting, and you can see the RAP race strategy across the board as they went forward, and then we just kept track, and we reported out at the end of each trimester back to me, and then I reported that back out to staff. Here's where we were at. We used mid-year data last year to kind of set the tone for that. And the fidelity of that data, self-reported, we used observations, my observations that I had with staff, and then the student results that we had. You see that? You can move forward, Bev. Good there. So look at the number of lessons this year that our teachers documented across the board. So as a SIP team, we talked about, obviously, the depth of the lessons first trimester were very different than the depth of the lesson in trimester 3. And these, where it's noted, we use the strategy in a lesson, that's where the teacher mentioned the strategy or practiced the strategy with the kids. So really heavy use throughout the year And it really has just become part of how we do business and a universal instruction with the kiddos. Our student data, really interesting. So a lot of numbers up there. If you can see where we were at. The highlighted ones, we actually at the end of the year gave 2 assessments. We gave our planned grade level assessment, which is the top one there at each grade level. And then in our SIP team meeting back in January, I vividly remember us talking about this in a SIP team meeting. One of the teachers mentioned, I wonder how well the kids would do if we didn't coach them. If they could use it on their own without us telling them to use the RAP or RACE strategy to answer the question. Because that's where we wanted to get the kids. We wanted no cards in front of them. We didn't want to have to tell them, hey, remember to use the RAP strategy when you answer these questions. So we created a school-wide grade level assessment. Didn't tell the kids it was an assessment. It was just an activity. We handed it to them, said, hey, we want you to complete this. Really gave no coaching, no directions, other than just read the directions at the top and complete the assignment. Look at those numbers with the no coaching totals. They actually did better on that than the one where we had the assessment. But in the ballpark there, and if you look at those last 3 numbers, see where our kids were at the beginning of the year with the assessment? We had 100 students meet that 80% benchmark that we were looking for. So just massive gains throughout the school year. And so we're really proud of that no coaching total, because we brought that up because that's what we want our kids to do. We shouldn't have to tell them. It should just be automatic for them when they're answering those questions to kick that in. And they showed us that they could do it. So that's pretty cool. Just sharing out some Aspire data here at the end of the year. Our reading data there, you can see we had some nice gains on the Aspire as well. You can see where we increased, from the fall, we had 50% of our students meeting grade level benchmark in the area of reading, and at the end of the school year, we had 71% meeting that benchmark. So overall, our Aspire data was really good here this spring. I'm very optimistic about the forward exam results that we'll get here, hopefully the end of the month, early July. What else do I have up there, Bev? Oh, that was it for me. Any questions for me?
Any reason on the 4th grade, the drop from spring to fall? Or fall to spring?
Yeah, our theory there, because we talked about that, they just finished taking math, reading, social studies, and science in the forward test. A week later, we gave this assessment. So we had pounded a lot of assessments at them during that time frame. And
I was just curious, because I was the only one that...
Yeah, the other numbers that I didn't share here held pretty steady from the fall assessments, and that's a pretty high achieving group overall. So their numbers in general are high. But I did meet with the 4th grade team, and we did talk about that. And our theory there is we had thrown a lot of tests at them because we did this after the forward test. Good question, Mike. Thanks. Yeah, that jumps out, doesn't it?
Yep.
But if you look, it's one student.
Yeah.
So, middle school, high school, those are team members for SIP team for school improvement. Continuing. So we're still working on increasing students' ability to read complex text. It is also the teachers and the administrators' student learning objective for evaluation. And then it is also increasing teachers' ability to teach and model reading complex text, which is their professional role also, and as Andy designed. So our theory is that students need to learn strategies they can use to access and understand text, and they need more exposure to complex text and engagement. And complex text comes in a variety of forms. It's not just maybe what you would traditionally consider literature or nonfiction. It comes in reading manuals and understanding technical information from different disciplines. So, and what happens when students start to enter middle school and then through high school is the content level of each discipline becomes more intense. There's a lot more vocabulary, it becomes more complex, and not only the vocabulary of the discipline, but then the vocabulary that it's written in. of this, we have to have teachers teaching, modeling, and practicing strategies with students using that content-rich text. And then we also need to increase our use of it. So instead of less reading, more exposure. So we used 5 different reading strategies: Cornell Notes, SOC, close reading, frame, and then concept definition mapping. And Beth, you can advance. This is our 3rd year. We only introduced 1 new strategy, which was Cornell Notes this fall. And then the other 4 had already been vetted the previous year. So we've gotten to the point now where we're going to develop a faculty handbook on all of those 5 strategies. And that'll serve as a guide, a resource, and it's also a way to refresh people and to calibrate practice. So this is our professional learning that we did over the course of the year. So we went by quarters and worked with teachers on each strategy. So we spent first quarter just on Cornell Notes because it was new, but then we did the other 4 over second and third quarter. And as I like to call it, lather, rinse, repeat. So we just keep doing these with kids. And what we're really trying to reach is authentic planning, application, and evaluation of practices as teachers. So like when a teacher looks at their unit, they identify where kids are reading. And then they look at the strategies and they're able to say, okay, I'm going to use Cornell Notes for this piece. I'm using the frame for this piece. Particularly in math, they may use Buck, which is a way to take apart story problems. It's also a way to take apart writing prompts. So that's what we're trying to get. And we're at a tipping point. So our Aspire data from fall, and we only did a winter benchmark because we knew that we had the ACT for all juniors in March. We knew we had forward testing and Aspire testing April and May, and we just didn't know how we were going to fit in a 3rd benchmark test. So we decided that we would go with 2 this year, and then we're going to use our data from forward and Aspire and for decision making this summer. So we still maintain gains in 6th grade and 7th grade. So we see a 5% increase is just moving kids, like moving 4 kids over 4. So when you're working with small n, it's not moving a lot of kids. It's just trying to get them there. So 6 and 7 made progress. 8, 9, and 10 we had drops. And 9th grade, yeah, we had drops. We also see the n changed too, as you'll see. So 8th grade gained 4 kids. 9th grade gained 2. And then 10th grade, they gained 3. So it kind of plays with the numbers. But regardless of the fact, yep, that's what the data said. So then ECT results. So in 1920, we had a great year. We had gains. This year, we did not have the gains. We did in math, 0.1. Yay, math. We did have drops. We had a drop in reading, and we had a drop in the composite. And I would assert that we haven't seen the data statewide or even nationwide yet. That usually comes out in the summer in a report from ECT. I have a feeling that our use of the reading strategies prevented more of a drop. That our focus on reading helped at least keep us in those 20s, and instead of dropping us into the teens.
The other thing, just for context real quick, if you don't live this, the numbers are kind of like, okay. I mean, typical state average since everyone's been taking the ACT is around 19.9. So, well, it's
not where I want
not
it to
yet.
be.
Well, we're
This is all
not
I
like
need.
throwing parties. The other piece that's important to remember, and Liz and I talk about this a lot, I mean, looking at it different, year to year, well, those are apples to oranges comparisons because you're talking about two different groups of students. What's crucial is to try to look at that growth and see, are we or are we not? That's more reflective of what's happening than, well, this year it was a point lower. Well, true, but that's 51 different kids that took the ACT last year. So to say that it automatically was like a bad year just isn't true. So you need to frame a little bit of context around it as well. And it will be very interesting to see what the state national data looks like because we've all lived
Especially after this year.
this year.
Yeah, yeah, because like our 1920 kids, they tested the week before we dismissed. So.
Yeah, hopefully, you know, if we would have had this year, those numbers would have been, you know.
It's continuing upward.
Yeah,
Which is what, you know, what
Gotta
you want
kind of
is-
give them a little bit of grace just because, you know.
I will give them grace.
So we're just lucky that, I'm glad to see that it didn't go down
Yeah.
substantially. That would be very,
And
that would
that's
be
why I
very
want-
concerning.
I would want to see, that's why I want to see the state and I
Yeah.
want to see the national data.
Yeah, to see what
because-
their numbers do.
Yeah, I want to look at like,
Right.
okay, how did we compare to Wisconsin?
Right.
How did Wisconsin compare to the nation?
Right, yeah, those numbers will be interesting when
Mhm.
they come out.
Yeah, yeah. So we're going to keep pushing forward and we know what we have to do. You can advance. So I would say that our staff in our building was very crispy by the end of this year. But we're going to stick with what we're doing. So we're going to stick with reading in professional learning community. And we're going to keep striving for authenticity of our strategies, not only for kids, but for teachers. And to keep increasing the amount of reading done in every class. It's just important for them to be exposed to it and to get practice with it. And it doesn't matter where they're going after high school. We need to give them as much as we can while they're with us, because wherever they go after high school, they're going to have to read and understand complex information. So this next year, we're working on increasing teachers' ability to teach, model, and measure reading complex text. So we've always relied on our ACT Aspire as our measurement benchmark, which is totally fine. It's a large-scale test instrument, and it has validity and reliability, such as what Dale mentioned. But there's also power in developing our own internal measures and helping teachers increase their assessment literacy and how to write a good reading test. So that'll be part of this work. And hopefully then we'll get to see students' ability to read complex text standards. We're doing it all together. That's that collaborative piece with PLC. That's why you can't, we have to do what education researchers and practitioners know, that if it's only one person trying to lift everyone, it doesn't work. So we've got to do it all together, and that's what we're going to keep pushing for.
I kind of have a question, and I'm not sure how I know how to phrase it, but in some of those areas of comprehension and teaching in complex literature and that kind of stuff, how do you determine, and I don't know how prevalent it is, that you have a kid that maybe can arrive at the same answer without the use of Cornell notes, and now you tell them they have to use Cornell notes, and then it confuses, you know, is there an extent where it's too narrowly focused that it separates some kids that would maybe use other ways of determining that, or?
So in it, like with Cornell notes,
Granted, I haven't been taught any, you know, so
yeah,
I'm just,
right,
I don't
right.
know.
They're very specific in their format and how they're presented, but what typically happens when kids are taught a note-taking strategy, they'll do the formula until they get it, and then they make it their own. So it's not so much that we're focusing on everyone has to have the same notes. It's, okay, do you have a formula that's working for you?
Okay, so it's more style than
It is.
necessarily.
It's very, yeah, it's very like formal style.
It's having a strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like-
Basically, their process inside a specific process, basically.
Right,
So like
right.
they kind of come up with their own kind of procedures within this core process.
But in
so
some
to
of the
speak.
stuff, it's not like, we hold kids to the standard of, you know, using the specifics without kind of integrating their own.
Right,
you
it's,
know.
because basically the strategy is the vehicle to get the
A more
information
broad
out of the text.
sense, okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
like, how are you know, what's the big idea of this text? And then what are the details that, or evidence that you know, building again on what they do in 3, 4, and 5, that you know supports that idea. And then, as kids progress, then what's the counter argument? And then at the end, they summarize, like, so what? What's the big deal? Or why do you think this is significant? So it's not just the taking the notes, it's thinking about what you're learning and then drawing a conclusion, which kids struggle with. You know, like, there's all this evidence, and I'm reading this, but what does it really mean? What's the big idea? And then what's the relationship that to other things we've read, other things I've learned in class, what the teacher has presented for information, things I read outside of class, experiences. So it's teaching kids how to think, which is hard.
At least for my kids, it seems like they get just so overwhelmed, and I keep telling them, okay, that's part of what you're trying to learn, is you're trying to take all of this information and figure out what you need to know, and so the Cornell Notes is just a way of trying to kind of
Get 'em
select it,
organized.
get it organized, and because they.
Well, and I guess that's what I was thinking, is how prevalent is it that a kid thinks this way and will arrive at the same conclusion and can't really explain to you how they've arrived there, but because their way of thinking is totally different than what we are trying to get them to think like. You know what I mean? So.
Yep.
I
Yeah,
don't
and
know.
I think like math, for example, some students have the ability to do a lot of mathematical processing in their head, and then so they're like, well, I don't really need to write it down. Well, the issue becomes, like, we all hit the wall, as I like to call it, mathematically, in any discipline, really. So when you, if you've never had to take notes, or you've never learned how to take notes, and it's always been in your head, and then all of a sudden you get to a place where, well, that's just not working for me anymore. So now not only do you have to learn to take notes, you gotta learn to think about those notes, and you gotta learn the material. So you have 3 more steps that if you would have been taking notes, learning the process the whole way along is not such a shock. And we've had students, like, a student who really desperately wanted to get out of pre-calc, and I'm like, no, you know, look, you want to go into business, you're going to have to take calculus, and I'm not letting you out of pre-calc. You know, you will learn from this, and it took a while before he said, it's like, all right, I'm glad you made me stay because I learned how to learn, and now I know I have to take 2 years of calculus. Yeah, so it's like, there's a lot of grumbling at the front end, my child included. In fact, one of our children, when I did a survey of kids, I had one student write, and I just died laughing. I would give anything to never have to take another Cornell note. Like, okay.
So I think, though, I mean, an important way to frame this, and if I'm mis-explaining this,
Yeah.
is feel free to correct me. It's the notion of like formative.
Yeah.
So formative assessment, formative learning, it's for learning. So these processes are to support learning. It's not as though they are being assessed or necessarily like, well, when you get your grade, we are measuring you based on how well you took the Cornell notes.
No.
We are providing you strategies for learning to help you access the content, which then becomes the summative assessment, the test in the class, the project, the ACT. So it's like a means to the end. It's not the end itself. And I think that's the crucial thing to try to remember. It's best practices. It's research-based. It's not something we invented and said, do this because we know, no, we are trying to help you access the content. And this is a process that helps get you to a deeper level of understanding with the content.
And I think it also gives the teacher a basis for, okay, you did terrible on this assignment, well, what did your Cornell notes look like? Well, you didn't do any of them, well, that's maybe a problem. If you filled out all the Cornell notes, and then somehow we're not able to figure out, where to go from there, then maybe that means there's something else going on, and we can figure that out.
And the content they're acquiring from their notes and from any reading strategy is what they should be seeing on their summative assessments. So it's not a surprise. It's like, well, the same questions that we were asking you when you were learning information are the same questions they're answering. No, you're good.
Any other questions for Liz? So Liz mentioned the staff, or the fact that at the end of the year, I think everyone was, she used the word crisp. It had been challenging.
That word's gonna come about
Tell you
at some point.
I know.
How many other colleagues I've talked to that, we were all in the same spot. So we wanted to provide this opportunity for staff members, but we also didn't want them to feel like they had to turn around and like immediately flip the brain to next year. They needed a little time to just recharge. So we're providing this opportunity. If you want to go to the next one. So key words here in what the opportunity that Dale had sent out as the curriculum directors to look at formative data with grade level or content teams. What was students' mastery of the essential content? Also, once we have the data, purposeful planning was July, is to look at state and local assessment data. What did it demonstrate? And then really the key word in that third bullet is to triangulate kind of the lived experience, the assessment data, and then our knowledge of the essential standards to then answer these questions. What have we accomplished? What have the students accomplished? And then what are we going to do about it moving forward? And the notion of vertical collaboration is grade level, so third grade working with fourth grade working with fifth grade, the ninth grade English teacher working with the 10th grade English teacher to then communicate those things. And one of the benefits of being a smaller district is we can have conversations in a positive way about individual students, because we know those students. We've experienced those students, and we'll work with them again in the future. A couple of other opportunities that were shared with staff, just things that are connected to some other large-scale things that we're working on as a district. Mental health, that obviously gets brought up a lot. So youth mental health, first aid trainings, and other opportunities that have been shared with staff members. And then nonviolent crisis intervention strategies, working with students, basically trying to communicate and de-escalate situations before they become situations or other opportunities that were shared with staff members. And then at this date, we kind of tried to set the stage and talk about how we're going to transition into 21-22. We are very excited, and that's a sincere, very excited about August 24th and 25th, our foundational PLC at work. We are bringing basically a PLC event to Wisconsin Heights School District. Every teacher and every educational assistant will be a part of it for 2 days during our in-service. This was our way to ensure that everyone had that baseline understanding. School improvement planning, which is what the principals just went through. Our launch date is August 16th. Kind of our key questions or objectives for that day. How is implementation? How do we know? That's a key question. What is the impact of our practice? How are we going to improve? And then really, how do we sustain this? If change is going to become something that lasts the test of time, it needs to be something that's sustainable and is not dependent on one individual, because individuals can come and go. It needs to become part of our system. And then we also did kind of give a heads up to the staff. We used the word proposed, but they had been talking about this. This didn't seem to be a mystery to most people, but to provide a bit of a heads up, because this will certainly have to be a part of our planning. And that final bullet point, we will be thoughtful and purposeful in how we start this transition process. So it's not like we just end in June and say, oh, by the way, here's what's going to happen for the fall. So we will start a very thoughtful and purposeful process this year on making that transition. So I think that's the last one.
Just just to chime in, the July to August work, we had 17 teams send us proposals, so we're gonna have a large group of staff that they're coming in the summer to, and the teams vary from a group of 2 up to a group of 6. So we had a great response, and we made put that offer out there.
Thank you, Jill, that's good news. Any other questions or follow-up on that? I appreciate the admin's efforts. They probably got sick of me bugging them on this all year because there were so many other things, but I appreciate how they stuck with it and kept pushing forward, so thank you. It went, okay, sorry. I was like staring at the screen
Jordan,
like,
you're doing great, keep on going.
employee relations. So board members had shared with you potential changes to the employee handbook. There was 2 documents, one that just kind of outlined the potential updates, a second one that was an actual updated draft of the employee handbook. This is really in line with the pattern that we followed the last 4 years. We shared a draft version. First meeting in June, we approved a final version, if you will, at the second meeting. You can see that this has been shared with district leadership, with the Teachers Federation, and then all district employees via email. Sought feedback throughout the year as well and communicated these updates with those groups. So board members, I don't know if you have any questions right now on the employee handbook or the proposed updates that you've seen.
Jordan, I do have a question. So on number 11, it says change to June effective immediately for the incentive payout. Can you just explain what that means?
Sure. Cindy, this is Bev. So what typically what had been done in the past is the administration team was paid out, after 3 years, 6 year, 9 year, there's those milestones. They were paid in June, but the rest of the staff was paid for some reason in September. So that was, if somebody left then in, let's say at the end of that school year, they didn't get that payment because they weren't here in September. So we're just putting it on so everybody's on the same schedule, that everybody gets that pay in June.
And then it actually got pushed to the next fiscal year as well.
Yes. Does that answer?
Any other board questions? Part of the item that we talked about is consistent, so the amount for custodians at
Oh, yes, excellent.
food service will be consistent with maintenance staff.
Wonderful.
All right, well, if there's anything that comes up in the next 11 days, let me know, because we'll post the agenda on that next Thursday. And like I said, we've gone through this with the staff. We haven't had anything that's been controversial or eye-popping, so I'm assuming the same probably applies for you as board members as well. Budget and finance. Board members, attached on this one, you will see a proposed fee reference guide for 21-22. So some relatively substantial change here, but I want to explain it. So what's highlighted is handbook, textbook rentals, basically the middle school, high school registration fee is highlighted at $60. Previously that fee was $40, and there was also a $5 fee for a lot rental. But then in addition to that, this list used to be about 2 times this length because there were course fees for many individual courses. So tech ed, family consumer science, business ed, some of our AP courses as well. In some cases, there was fees that were up to $60 to take a course. I think we understood the reasoning behind that once upon a time, but also after running the numbers, did about a 4 to 5 year analysis. We typically collected between $22,000 and $28,000 in fees. By virtue of eliminating, around 20 fees, and then making this, I think, relatively minor increase to just the general registration fee. We're predicting out around a $22,000 revenue, so a loss of around $6,000 in revenue. But I can tell you in terms of administration, in terms of communication with families and confusion about paying all of these different fees for all of these different classes, and then conversations that we've had with our colleagues in Dane County around equity, and for the fact that even though there are waivers or things that families can do to say, ask for basically the fees to be waived, much like the free and reduced lunch thing, that turns into a pride thing for some individuals. And as they look at that course description handbook, it's easier just to say, you know what, I'm going to take the class without a fee because I don't want to walk up to Liz Dostal or to Cheryl Knowles or to someone else and ask for that fee to be waived. And we just do not feel like for a total revenue difference of approximately $6,000 as a district that we would ever want to have students and families making decisions that courses are inaccessible to them because of a fee that's attached to it. I think this was really magnified by the pandemic. It just became really difficult, especially this year as we were trying to clean up, like, when were you actually in school, when were you not in school, how many of the materials did you get? It honestly became very cumbersome. So that would be one rather large change to this structure. I view it as student and family and community friendly. I hope people would perceive it that way as well. But admittedly, from a financial standpoint, the notion of around $6,000, of course, every penny is important, but in terms of the cost-benefit analysis, I just do not think, I would not recommend that for $6,000 we maintain status quo. So that's why.
I agree that, I think we do probably have a large number of students that don't take classes because of the fees. I mean, with me having 4 kids in school, I was like, my fees were like almost $500 some year. So I mean, I think, losing the $6,000 to me is not important. What's more important, I think, is if we get some of those students that want to take those extra classes, and like you said, it's more of a pride thing. You don't want to be known as, that family who, can't pay for, fees and stuff like that in order for them to participate in classes. So in my opinion, I think the $6,000, yes, it's a decrease in revenue, but in the long term, you're gonna give more students more chance to have, more specialized classes, and there's no price tag for that. So it's a good thing to be able to waive some of those fees get rid of some of those fees for some families. And especially being such a small district too. We don't have, 1,500 students, 2,000 students that, yeah, I think it's a good way to go.
So unless there's an objection to that, then we'll bring this back for approval at the next meeting then. It's that time of year already where we need to get ready for registration. So this will have to get put into Skyward. All right.
Awesome.
All right, well, we are through committee, Cindy, so do you want to try to take it back on district business now?
Sounds great. I'm ready. All right, so do I have a motion to approve a donation of $1,250 from the Madison Motorcycle Club for the Tech Ed Department?
So moved. Second.
Great, thank you. This is amazing. Thank you again to the Madison Motorcycle Club. This is a very generous donation. Does anyone else have any
Did they say anything, or did they donate to other schools? Or, is there a connection that they have?
Pete has a lot to do with this, doesn't he?
Yes, so Pete Longmire.
Pete's done a lot with this, yeah, he's done a lot of donations, I think, I've seen a few of them come through from him, or different groups he's a part of, so he's done an amazing job with that.
Parent, member of our Technology Education Advisory Board, actually open enrolls his children to our district, and a very just positive, supportive guy of Wisconsin Heights.
Keep up the good work, Michael, with that committee.
Great. Wonderful. Well, I will take a
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Mary Beth? Yes. James?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
I'll say yes as well, wonderful. Do I have do I have a motion to approve the, open enrollment for a student in for the 21-22 school year?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Perfect, thank you. Any questions, comments on this? I always like to see them coming in. I'm not hearing anybody else chatting, so, Mike?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Mary Beth? Yes. James?
Yeah.
Barb?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
I'll say yes as well. Unless anyone has a objection, I'd like to combine 9-1 and 9-2, the two resignations of the EAs from at the end of this school year.
So
Do
moved.
I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
James and then Matt with the second.
Perfect. Thank you to both of them. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, Mike?
Yes.
Hey, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry, awkwardness.
No, go ahead.
Little shout out to Kinster. He's been all over the building, very active. He coaches, he opens the weight room, he makes some connections with so many kids. He's just done a lot for our school, and he's definitely going to be missed. And not to take away from Ashley, I work with her and May so much, but just with Jay, I just needed to give him some love as he's on his way out. He's going to stick around with us, into the fall for coaching and stuff. He's going to be in the weight room this summer. So he'll still be around, but it's a shame to lose him. So.
You're right, it was awkward, but thanks, Andy.
I thought it was worth it, so sorry.
It was.
All right.
Thank you, Andy.
I think we were like mid-vote, or are we good there? Yeah, we're good.
We can get everybody.
Oh, there we go. I'm sorry, I froze.
She went to Mike.
I
and
don't
then-
think I.
Yeah, she went to Mike and then,
Yeah.
and Andy stepped in. So
Okay. Cindy, why don't you just go back through on that one and re-get it so we have everyone on there.
Perfect. We have the first and second on the resignation. So Mike,
Yes.
Angie,
Yes.
Mary Beth? Yes. James,
Yes.
Barb,
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
And I'll say yes as well. Thank you, guys. All right, so then moving on to the, looking for an approval for the WIAA membership for the 21-22 school year. This is an annual action that we do. Do I have a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, I will take the vote. Mike?
Yes.
Angie?
Yes.
Mary Beth? Yes. James?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. Moving then on to future meeting dates. Everybody, it looks like we are there. We do need to, so I know that Matt was able to get off for July 19th. Is there any other concerns or issues with that time? I am working with the individual for rookies. We're working on that. They aren't opening downstairs, so I'm trying to sweet talk them into letting us go for a small group and an awesome group. So we're working on that.
Okay, so we're confirmed for the 19th and then 5 p.m. as well?
Yes.
Okay,
So we will, yep.
Thanks,
we'll
Matt.
go with that date and time. Perfect.
all right, sounds good. We can get the details in the next month.
Yes, yep, we'll finish everything else. That's great. All right. Then, clerk, could I have a roll call to adjourn to executive session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.81, parent 1, parent E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business, whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session.
Angie Wolf?
Yes.
Cindy Byteam,
Yes.
Mary Beth Shaw,
Yes.
James Cartman,
Yes.
Barb Stotts,
Yes.
Matt Kroll.
Yes. All right, Cindy, I'll start up the next Zoom as soon as we get into the conference room.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you all.
See you soon. Yeah, we're gonna jump in the conference room.
I gotta tell you a story.
Drop the camera.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep, thanks, Mike. Take care. See you tomorrow.